That recurring dream you dismiss as nonsense, that sudden flash of rage that frightens even you, that pattern of self-sabotage you call bad luck. These are not random glitches in your wiring. They are distress signals, postcards from the parts of yourself you have buried alive, and they are starting to dig their way out. You believe you are free, but you live within a cage. It is a beautiful cage, exquisitely crafted, and gilded with the gold of social approval, professional success, and predictable routines. This is your persona, the mask you present to the world, the curated version of yourself designed for acceptance and survival. It is a masterpiece of psychological engineering, your own personal fortress of the ego, constructed brick by brick since childhood to protect you from the harsh wilderness of the world, and more importantly, from the wilderness within. You are the responsible employee, the caring friend, the rational thinker, the stable partner. Each role is a polished bar in this cage, reinforcing its structure, making you feel secure, defined, and understandable to yourself and others. You have a map for this small territory. Every street is named, every building is familiar. There are no shadows here, no monsters, no unexplainable phenomena. There is only the comforting hum of the known, the metronome of a life lived on the surface. But the price of this gilded safety is staggering. The cost is your own totality. In exchange for acceptance, you have amputated vast regions of your own soul. The wild, chaotic, passionate, and powerful parts of your being were deemed unacceptable for public display, and so they were locked away in the dungeons below the fortress. The cage, you see, is not just for keeping the world out, it is for keeping you in. And deep down you feel it. You feel it in the quiet moments of profound emptiness, in the gnawing boredom that no amount of entertainment can satiate. You feel it as a sense of profound fraudulence, the nagging suspicion that you are merely an actor playing a role, speaking lines written by a script you never agreed to. This is the first and most subtle horror of the psyche, the realization that the safety you have built is, in fact, your prison. Its walls are not made of steel, but of your own fear of what lies beyond them. And the influence of those forbidden lands, the ones not on your safe map, has already begun to seep through the floorboards. It manifests as a low-grade anxiety you cannot name, a melancholy that clings to you like a damp shroud, a series of unlucky relationships that are in truth the same pattern repeating itself with different faces. You mistake these for problems to be solved on the surface. You rearrange the furniture in your cage, you polish the bars, you seek new distractions, but you refuse to acknowledge the sound coming from the basement. You refuse to admit that the entire fortress is built upon something ancient, powerful, and utterly indifferent to your carefully constructed identity. This is the illusion of safe passage. The belief that you can navigate the entirety of your life while staying only in the well-lit rooms of your consciousness, willfully ignorant of the vast, dark continent that exists within you. This ignorance cannot hold. The unconscious is not a passive basement where old memories are stored. It is a living, breathing ecosystem, a dynamic force that seeks balance. Your one-sided, hyper-rational, and socially conforming life is an extreme imbalance, an act of defiance against the totality of your own nature. And nature, when suppressed, does not simply disappear. It builds pressure. It seeks release. This is the second, more urgent truth. The unconscious does not politely knock on the door. It sends seismic tremors from below. These are not gentle invitations, they are violent summons. That sudden, overwhelming obsession with a new person is not merely love. It is a tremor. It is the psyche, starved of its archetypal counterpart, the anima or animus, projecting the image of a god or goddess onto a mortal, a desperate attempt to become whole by possessing another. It is a sign that the foundations of your identity are cracking. That crippling panic attack that strikes from nowhere is not a random neurological misfire, it is a tremor. It is the accumulated terror of all the parts of yourself you have repressed, your aggression, your vulnerability, your hidden power, screaming for air, shaking the very bars of your cage. That act of self-sabotage, where you inexplicably destroy the very opportunity you worked so hard for, is the most telling tremor of all. It is the act of a prisoner within you, a shadow self, that would rather burn the entire fortress to the ground than spend another day in exile. You call these things problems, You seek to medicate the symptom, to rationalize the obsession, to forget the breakdown. You treat the smoke while ignoring the fire. But from the Jungian perspective, these are not pathologies. They are communications. They are the emergency flares fired from the lost territories of your own soul. The psyche is attempting to save you from the slow death of a partial life. It creates a crisis to force you to abandon the false map and confront the true territory. The great psychologist Carl Jung stated that what is not brought to consciousness does not simply vanish. It returns as fate. If you refuse to consciously engage with the rage you have buried, you will meet it in the form of a tyrannical boss or an abusive partner. If you refuse to acknowledge your own inner emptiness, you will be drawn into addictive behaviors that hollow you out from the inside. The forces of the forbidden places will have their say. The choice is not if you will visit them. The choice is only this: will you enter them as a conscious explorer, prepared for the journey, or will you be dragged into them as a victim, kicking and screaming, when the floor of your gilded cage finally gives way? The tremors are a warning. They are a mercy. They are the sound of the real world breaking through the paper-thin reality you have mistaken for your life. For your conscious mind is not a house of stone, but a tent pitched on a dormant volcano. The tremors have already begun. Comment, "I feel the tremor," if you dare to look at the fissures opening in the ground beneath you, and subscribe to discover what truly lives in the depths. You felt the tremor. You acknowledged the fissure that split the pristine marble floor of your consciousness, and you did not turn away. You chose to peer into the abyss. Now you ask for a map of that darkness, a guide to the pandemonium that churns beneath the thin crust of your waking self. But you must understand, this is no ordinary cartography. It is a forbidden atlas, a bestiary of the inner cosmos, detailing the sovereign territories that your ego has declared off limits. These are not mere concepts. They are living, breathing landscapes within your soul, each with its own climate, its own laws, and its own resident powers. To name them is to give them form. To understand them is the first step toward traversing them. There are 7 principal territories of prohibition, 7 dominions of the deep self whose energies bleed into your world, orchestrating your fate from the shadows. They are the necropolis of the repressed self, the phantom cathedral of the soul image, the labyrinth of ancestral ghosts, the lotus casino of the unlived life, the obsidian desert of meaninglessness, the citadel of the petrified king, and at the very center of it all, the serpent's maw at the world's axis. To know these places is to understand the geography of your own suffering and your own liberation. Let us begin with the first and most densely populated of these forbidden zones, the necropolis of the repressed self. Imagine a vast subterranean city of the dead. This is the shadow. It is the final resting place for every aspect of your being that you have been taught to hate, fear, or deny. Every impulse, every thought, every talent that did not fit the pristine architecture of your persona was murdered at birth and interred here. But in this city, the dead do not rest. They fester. They mutate. They become ghouls. The unexpressed creativity you abandoned for a sensible career roams these catacombs as a bitter phantom, sabotaging your professional life. The righteous anger you swallowed to be seen as nice has consolidated into a seething, monstrous entity, one that erupts in shocking bursts of disproportionate rage at trivial provocations. Your raw, untamed ambition, your primal sexuality, your capacity for ruthless survival, all the vital, life-affirming energies that society deemed too dangerous or too inconvenient, are here, chained in the dark. You were taught that this place held only your evil, but that is a profound lie. The necropolis holds your power. It is a reservoir of all the psychic energy you disowned, and its influence is everywhere. It echoes in the waking world as that inexplicable, visceral revulsion you feel towards certain people. Often they are merely mirrors, reflecting back a quality you have interred in your own necropolis. Your judgment of them is the sound of your own ghouls rattling their chains. It manifests as the Freudian slip, a moment when one of the dead momentarily breaks free and speaks a horrifying truth through your mouth. And most potently, it is the engine of your self-destruction, the part of you that prefers ruin over a life of inauthentic servitude. To keep this territory forbidden is to live in constant fear of a zombie apocalypse erupting from within your own soul. Next, we journey to a place of haunting, illusory beauty, the phantom cathedral of the soul image. This is the domain of the anima and animus, the inner countersexual figures that reside within every man and woman. This is not a structure of stone and mortar, but one of light and longing. Its walls are woven from the fabric of myth. Its windows are stained glass projections of gods and goddesses, saints and demons. It is here that your deepest, most archetypal images of the other are forged. When you experience that bolt of lightning, love at first sight, you have not met a person. You have met a projection from your own cathedral. You have mistaken a mortal for one of the holographic deities that populate this sacred space. You fall in love not with them, but with a missing fragment of your own soul, which you now see shimmering around them like an aura. This is the source of all romantic obsession and all devastating disillusionment. The echo of this cathedral in the waking world is the pattern of falling for the same person over and over again, each time hoping this vessel will finally contain the divine essence you project onto them. It is the crushing disappointment when you discover your God has human flaws, when the light flickers and you see the ordinary person standing in the place of your phantom. The bitterness and rage that follow are not born of betrayal by the other, but by the collapse of your own sacred illusion. Those who wander this cathedral endlessly become pilgrims of heartbreak, perpetually seeking an external savior to complete an internal rite. They demand that another person become their religion, and in doing so, they condemn themselves to a life of worshipping ghosts, forever unable to form a genuine connection with a flesh and blood human being. This forbidden place is a paradise of idealization, but its price is the complete inability to experience true, grounded love. Finally, we approach the most seductive and tragic of the territories, the Lotus Casino of the unlived life. This is the kingdom of the puer aeternus, the eternal youth. It is a glittering, timeless palace where the air hums with the intoxicating music of pure potential. There are infinite games to be played, and every single one promises an unimaginable jackpot. Here you can be anything and everything. A great artist, a visionary entrepreneur, a world traveler, a profound scholar. All these futures are available to you, gleaming and perfect. There is only one rule in the casino: you cannot cash in your chips. To choose one path is to sacrifice all others, and in this domain sacrifice is the only sin. The price of admission is your present moment. Its echoes in your world are deafeningly common. It is the person in their 30s who still doesn't know what they want to be when they grow up, paralyzed by a universe of options. It is the artist with a dozen brilliant, unfinished canvases, for to finish one would be to admit it is not the ultimate masterpiece. It is the serial dater who fears commitment, not because they don't love their partner, but because committing means the end of the search for a mythical, perfect partner who may be just around the corner. The Lotus Casino is a psychic addiction to the promise of tomorrow, a promise that keeps you from the sacred and demanding work of today. It whispers that you are special, that you are above the mundane constraints of reality, that your potential is too vast to be contained in a single life path, and so you remain unformed, a creature of pure, shimmering potentiality who never quite becomes real. The tragedy is that while you are dreaming of all the lives you could live, the one life you actually have is slipping through your fingers, spent like cheap currency on a fantasy that will never pay out. These are but 3 of the 7 dominions. Each is a world unto itself, a complex architecture of experience that shapes your reality from a dimension you cannot perceive. To leave them unexplored, to insist they remain forbidden, is to be a puppet. Your strings pulled by unconscious forces you refuse to name. You have the guide. You have the names for these phantom limbs and haunted inner rooms. But to know the map is not the same as making the journey. The next step is not one of observation, but of descent. It is the conscious decision to cross the border, to step into the darkness, and to face the sovereigns of these lost domains. You now possess the Forbidden Atlas. You have named the phantom territories that govern your fate, but knowledge you are about to discover is a cold and distant comfort when you are standing at the precipice of your own inner hell. To know the name of the dragon is not the same as facing its fire. This is the moment of true initiation, the point where the philosopher must become the warrior and the map must be discarded for the treacherous and unblazed trail. The journey forward is not one of intellect, but of immense, soul-shattering courage. It is a conscious pilgrimage into the agony you have spent a lifetime avoiding. This is the crucible. This is the alchemical stage of nigredo, the absolute blackening, where the old self must be utterly dissolved in the prima materia of the unconscious before anything new can be born. It begins with a choice, to turn your back on the gilded cage and take the first deliberate step into the necropolis of the repressed self. The descent is a process of systematic surrender. You must leave your persona at the gates like a useless set of armor. Your intellect, your rationality, your social graces, these are the currencies of the sunlit world, and they are worthless here. The only thing required is the willingness to be undone. As you cross the threshold, the very air changes. It grows heavy with the psychic weight of unlived life. The whispers you hear are not of ghosts, but of your own abandoned potentials. This is the horror you must embrace. You will not be confronting an external evil. You will be holding an audience with the legion of selves you chose not to be. You must find the ghoul of your buried rage, not to vanquish it, but to sit with it. You must ask it why it was born. Listen to the story of the injustices it swallowed. Feel the searing heat of its indignation until you recognize it as your own sacred fire. You must seek out the weeping wraith of your vulnerability, the part of you that was shamed into silence for being too soft, too feeling. You must hold it, not to soothe it into disappearing, but to honor its grief, to acknowledge that its tears were the rightful rain for a drought-stricken soul. This is the work. It is the agonizing process of looking into the twisted face of each monster and recognizing your own reflection. The true terror is not the confrontation, but the recognition, the realization that your capacity for cruelty is as profound as your capacity for love. The admission that the pathetic, whimpering creature in the corner is you, the acceptance that the seething, destructive entity is also you. In this crucible, the ego is slowly, painfully cooked down. The narrative of "I am a good person" begins to fall apart, exposed as a flimsy shield against the terrifying, paradoxical truth of your own nature. You are not good. You are not evil. You are whole. And wholeness contains everything. This is the moment of unraveling, where the tightly wound identity you called me comes completely apart, dissolving into the chaotic, black, and fertile soup of the unconscious. The price of evading this descent is the most catastrophic bargain a human can make. To keep these territories forbidden is to condemn yourself to a life of perpetual haunting. The sovereigns of these repressed domains do not remain quiescently in exile. When denied a voice in the conscious parliament of your mind, they form a shadow government. They become autonomous complexes that rule you from beneath. The unacknowledged rage from your necropolis does not sleep. It projects itself onto the world. You begin to see tyrants everywhere. In your boss in the government, in other drivers on the road. You wage a holy war against the external world, never realizing you are merely fighting a civil war against your own disowned parts. The unmourned grief of your inner wraith does not fade. It drains the color from your life, creating a persistent, low-grade depression, a sense of meaninglessness that you try to fill with hollow pursuits. You become a ghost in your own existence. By refusing to face the horrors within, you turn the outer world into a horror film of your own making, populated by the monsters you refuse to claim as your own. This is the ultimate price of evasion. You do not escape the darkness. You simply become its unwitting slave, a puppet whose strings are pulled by the very energies you deny. But for those who endure the crucible, for those who allow themselves to be broken down in the alchemical fire, the reward is not peace. It is not happiness. It is something far more valuable. It is gold. This is the aurum non vulgi, the gold of the philosophers, which is power forged from the integration of shadow. When you eat with the dead, when you consciously reassimilate the energy of a repressed aspect, you reclaim a vast reservoir of psychic force. The colossal amount of energy you once expended on keeping that rage locked down is now liberated. It is transmuted. It becomes the unwavering power to set boundaries, to speak your truth, to defend what is sacred to you. The vulnerability you reclaimed is no longer a weakness. it becomes the foundation for profound intimacy and fearless compassion. You have taken the lead of your own psychic prisons and forged it into the gold of sovereignty. You no longer need to project a demon onto your enemy, because you are on speaking terms with your own inner demon. You understand its needs, its power, and its purpose. You have harnessed it. The dragon is no longer a threat to burn down your village, because you have learned to ride it. This is the fruit of agony. You emerge from the blackness not as a lighter being, but as a denser one, a being with psychic gravity, anchored in the full, terrifying, and glorious truth of what you are. This transmutation fundamentally alters your perception. As you return from the underworld, you find the sunlit world both the same and utterly different. You have acquired what can only be described as night vision, where others see only the surface of human interaction. You see the subterranean tectonics. You can perceive the invisible currents of the unconscious moving beneath the placid surface of conversation. In a negotiation, you see the shadow projections, the father complexes, the hidden insecurities that are the true drivers of the conflict. In a friend's romantic drama, you recognize the telltale shimmer of an anima projection, the hopeless attempt to find a goddess in a mortal woman. You can sense the cloying sweetness of the Lotus Casino in the voice of someone defending their refusal to commit to life. The world, for you, has become transparent. You see the ghosts, the ghouls, the phantoms that animate people from below, the very same ones you met and integrated within yourself. This new sight is not a judgment. It is a profound discernment. It strips away the comforting illusions and replaces them with a stark and sometimes lonely clarity. You are no longer a reactive participant in the unconscious dramas of others. You are an observer, a witness to the great and tragic play of the human soul. You have been into the darkness, and it has given you the gift of sight. You have walked through the alchemical fire and stood witness as the edifice of your former self was burned to ash and slag. You descended into the pandemonium and did not flee. Now you stand in the silent aftermath upon the ruins of the identity you once held so dear. Before we reveal how a kingdom is built from these sacred embers, ensure you are subscribed, for the final art of reconstruction is a secret reserved for those who have completed the pilgrimage back from the abyss. This is not the end of the journey. This is where your true life begins, not as a survivor, but as a sovereign. The new reality begins with a radical reinterpretation of what it means to be whole. The world of the persona, the sunlit world you left behind, is obsessed with an ideal of pristine, unbroken perfection. It teaches you that your wounds are shameful, that your scars must be hidden, that the goal of healing is to return to a state before the damage. This is the great lie of the surface. You have been through the crucible, you know the truth. You cannot go back. The mind that has been unraveled cannot be rewoven into its old, simplistic pattern. The shattering was not an accident, it was a necessity. Your new self is born from this understanding, a self best described by the Japanese art of kintsugi. When a precious ceramic bowl is broken, the kintsugi master does not try to glue the pieces back together seamlessly, hiding the cracks. Instead, he painstakingly reassembles the fragments using lacquer mixed with powdered gold. The result is a vessel that is not only functional, but is now more beautiful, more valuable, and stronger, because of its history of being broken. This is the nature of your individuated self. The fractures from every betrayal, every failure, every agonizing confrontation in your inner necropolis are not flaws to be concealed. They are the very lines where the gold of consciousness now flows. The searing shame you faced has become a golden seam of humility. The terror you endured has been transformed into a luminous vein of courage. The profound grief you integrated is now a radiant filament of empathy, allowing you to connect with the suffering of the world without being drowned by it. You are not healed in the sense of being returned to a naive, unscarred state. You are consecrated. Your very wounds have become your points of greatest strength and luminosity. The warring factions within you have ceased their civil war. The ghouls of the necropolis are no longer prisoners. They have been given citizenship. Their immense energies have been repurposed. The ancient rage is no longer a saboteur. It is the incorruptible guardian of your boundaries. The primal fear is no longer a paralytic agent. It is a wise counselor, a source of profound intuition. You have become a unified kingdom, a walking paradox held in perfect tension, formidable because of your acknowledged fragility, wise because you have honored your inner fool, and luminous because you have fully integrated your own darkness. This internal reconfiguration creates a fundamental shift in your relationship with the external world. You begin to exert what can only be described as the gravity of the real. An individual living solely in the persona, a collection of unintegrated parts and borrowed opinions, is psychically light, scattered, and porous. But you, having journeyed to your own core and reclaimed your exiled fragments, now possess psychic density. You have a center of gravity. This is not an act of will, it is a fundamental property of your new state of being, and this gravity reorganizes the reality around you. People who operate on manipulation, inauthenticity, and covert aggression find your presence deeply uncomfortable, even intolerable. Their psychic structures are too flimsy to withstand your coherence. Their passive aggression finds no cracks to seep into. Their projections slide off your integrated surface. Their attempts to trigger your old wounds fail because those wounds are no longer sources of unconscious reaction, but are now conscious centers of power. They are repelled from your orbit, not because you push them away, but because the sheer gravitational force of your authenticity makes it impossible for their illusions to maintain their shape in your presence. Conversely, you become a beacon for the authentic. Other souls engaged in the great work, others who carry their own golden scars, are drawn to you. They recognize the density, the weight of a person who has done their inner work. A new kind of relationship becomes possible, one free from the desperate clinging of unmet needs and the distorting fog of archetypal projection. It is a communion of sovereigns, a connection based not on mutual woundedness, but on mutual respect for the painful, beautiful journey of becoming whole. In this way, your very presence becomes a form of alchemy for the world around you. You are a living mirror. You do not need to preach, to advise, or to fix anyone. By simply being who you are, your integrated wholeness illuminates the disintegration in others. Your quiet self-possession highlights their frantic search for external validation. Your comfort with your own shadow forces them into a confrontation with theirs. You become a catalyst for truth, often without speaking a single word. And this brings us to the ultimate philosophical conclusion, the final treasure wrested from the jaws of the underworld. The goal of this entire agonizing odyssey was not to build a new impregnable fortress and lock yourself inside. The point was not to achieve a static state of enlightenment or perpetual bliss. The true prize is not a destination, it is a passport. The ultimate freedom is that of the fearless traveler. The forbidden places are forbidden to you no longer. You have earned the rite of passage. You can now journey to the necropolis of your own volition to consult with the raw power you keep there. You can visit the Phantom Cathedral and witness your own archetypal projections without becoming enslaved by them. You have learned the language of dreams, the dialect of symptoms, the cartography of your own soul. The fear of the unknown within you has been replaced by a deep and abiding familiarity. The supreme liberation is this: the ability to traverse the full spectrum of your own being, from the brightest peaks of joy to the darkest caverns of sorrow, from divine inspiration to murderous rage, and to never again lose your way. It is the power to willingly descend into chaos and return to center, not unscathed but enriched. True sovereignty is not the control of your inner world, but the freedom to move within it, fearlessly and consciously, knowing that all of it, the monstrous, the beautiful, the terrifying, the divine, all of it is you. And in that complete self-acceptance, you are finally, irrevocably free.